All right, Bill, well, top of the hour, we are expecting President Donald Trump to speak at 10:30. This after he earlier tweeted this: "My warmest condolences and sympathies to the victims and families of the terrible Las Vegas shooting. God bless you." That was the first response that we have heard to the president on this mass shooting. And joining me now is Brit Hume, Fox News senior political analyst. Brit, this is going to be the first we have heard the president respond to this as he steps up to make a statement at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time.
This is a very dark day in our country's history, Sandra, and I think it's a challenge for any leading official, including the president, to strike the tone that would be the equal of this hideous atrocity that has happened out there. It's possible, as your previous guest suggested, that this could be kind of a unifying moment in the way that people respond to it, but it's a tough challenge, and people are going to be, there's always inevitably a political piece of this. People most certainly go to the usual battle stations over gun control, pro and con, mental health issues, motivations of the shooter and all that. We're going to hear all of that in the coming days. But the magnitude of this is greater than anything we've seen. This is terrible. People
are waking up to this, Britt. Some learning of it just now, as it's only 7 o'clock on the West Coast. People are scared at what they're learning. They're scared at what they're seeing. What does this country need to hear from our president?
Well, if I could, I can't really imagine something that would be the equal of this, but I think it's important that the president express a calm and sympathetic tone, that he be clear about the dimensions of this, that he avoid any comment that would be seen or felt as divisive. And in these divided times, Sandra, it's very hard to say anything about almost anything that won't offend somebody. And it would be, it would be a challenge for any public official to speak about this ghastly massacre that has happened out there, and we don't, and the other thing is, of course, we don't know the full dimensions of this yet. I mean, nearly everybody that's talked about this indicates that a great many of those who are hospitalized, by the hundreds, are severely wounded. So this death count we've seen, which is holding at 50, is likely to climb substantially in the hours and days ahead, and it'll be interesting to see the reaction of the public too, because this is bigger than anything we've seen in its dimensions, and the effect of it is kind of hard to calculate at this stage.
So, and what does the president need to do right now? When we look at the numbers, over 400 people from that concert have been transported to area hospitals. The sheriff said at the top of the last hour, the FBI response is vital in this and the ongoing investigation. What do we need to hear from the president as he leads us through this?
Well, this is one of those issues that crosses all the boundaries of authority. Yes, this is a local mass murder. It is also a national case. The FBI is involved in this, ascertaining the motive of the shooter as quickly as possible. The president needs to be very careful that whatever information he circulates or puts into play is correct. The president sometimes has a habit of speaking about things in a way that later proves to be off base, not because he intends it to be, but just because he, like anybody, gets things wrong sometimes. So this is a time for being careful and measured and accurate and comforting to the extent that it's possible to be comforting about something so horrible.
And this is a president, Britt, I'll remind everybody, that has a lot on his plate. I would say it's tax reform and health care, but there is still devastation in Puerto Rico.
There is.
That this president is dealing with.
We're living in a time, Sandra, when we seem to wake up nearly every day wondering how bad the latest hideous thing to hit is, how bad the hurricane's going to be in Houston and elsewhere, how horrible the damage from Maria is in Puerto Rico and those other Caribbean islands. All of that is, and the presidents, and other officials' responses to these things are measured politically by partisans and looking for opportunities to criticize and attack. So this is a real high wire act for the president and other public officials in these times, which are so troubling. And Sandra, there's an extent to which, over time, people would like things to please just calm down. Whether it's political battles in Washington, whether it's reaction to devastating storms, and whether in this case it may be the response to this ghastly massacre, people would like things to calm down. And if they can't themselves calm down, they would certainly like their leaders to treat with them in a way that doesn't exacerbate the tensions and the anxiety that the public in this country unmistakably feel at this hour of our nation's history. And
as you suggested, perhaps the president could lend that sense of calm when he speaks, coming up at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Britt Hume, thank you for coming on, sir.
You bet, Sandra.
This was a country music festival that was, well, in that realm, is known to every country music fan in America. Jason Aldean was on stage, but you had Eric Church and Sam Hunt and Jake Owen and Mary Morris and the Osmond brothers Osborne, Lee Brice, and so many others performing over a period of 3 days. The Route 91 Harvest Festival has become a bit of a country music scene for so many fans across this country. If you take Interstate 15 northeast out of Las Vegas, it only takes about 85 miles up that interstate and you arrive in Mesquite, Nevada, which is the home address for the killer. Now, Jonathan Hunt back in Las Vegas has been looking at more on him and his hometown and what more we are learning now. Jonathan, back to you. Good morning. What did you find out?
Bill, good morning, Bill. I just got off the phone with the Mesquite Police Department. Bottom line is Stephen Paddock is a, quote, mystery to them. They have never had a single call, they tell me, for service to his home. They're not even exactly clear at this point how long he'd even lived in Mesquite. They said he's a mystery to us because we've simply had no reason to ever find out more about him. They are talking to neighbors of his there, hoping that they can glean some information about him. They've found no trace of any family members there. We have heard from a brother, of course. I believe that brother was in Florida, and he is just absolutely shocked that his brother, Stephen Paddock, would have carried out a massacre like this. But up in Mesquite, they're really doing their best to find out anything they can that might give us a clue to a motive, but no dice so far. Of course, there may be some critical information inside that home that he has in Mesquite, but they're going very obviously to move in there very slowly in case of any kind of booby traps, etc. The kind of thing, the same kind of operation that Catherine Herridge was talking about earlier, that they're doing at the room here at the Mandalay Bay. And just as I talk about that, Bill, let's push in, and as the sun comes up here in Las Vegas, you can push in there. It's a long shot, but you can plainly see the curtain flapping in the wind from the 32nd floor. That, we believe, is the vantage point from which Stephen Paddock took those rifles, up to 10 of them he had in the room with him, and aimed down on the helpless crowd simply attending a country music concert. So Vegas is still coming to terms with this as everybody begins to wake up here now. Bill, it is obviously a horrific act for the people of Las Vegas and indeed the entire country to come to terms with. But up in Mesquite, they're trying to give us some answers as to what may have been Stephen Paddock's motive. But as yet, they've got nothing to tell us, Bill.
Well, Jonathan Hunt, thank you. South end of the Strip there in Las Vegas. Stephen Paddock, Sandra, age 64, Mesquite, Nevada. We're just starting to learn about this man and his life, and we have very little information so far. Apparently, his brother just gave an interview to a local TV station. Don't know where this happened, and this is the first time we're seeing it, so go ahead and roll it. We'll watch it together now.
He called his mother.
Ever any indication at all that this would...
Nothing. That we're lost. I don't understand. There's no anything.
No, it makes no sense to any of us. Apparently that gentleman lives in Florida. We don't know where in Florida, but Stephen Paddock had an address in Florida, Sandra, for some time, for a period of years before moving to the West in Nevada. So we're trying to piece it together a little bit by a little bit, you know, hour by hour.
Initially, we learned that Stephen Paddock that was such raw reaction from his brother there. Originally, we learned he was known to authorities, and it raised eyebrows. Oh, boy. But then the police stepped out at the top of the last hour, Bill, and told us that they could only find one citation from several years ago. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, a lot still to learn.
Ed Davis now by telephone. Ed, you there?
I am. Good morning, Bill.
Former Boston Police Commissioner, Fox News contributor, and good morning to you. Where are you today? Are you in Boston?
No, actually, I'm in Las Vegas on the Strip.
Okay, in Las Vegas now, on the Strip. Which hotel, Ed?
I'm at the Palazzo, about 3 or 4 miles away from the Mandalay Bay.
Go ahead and share us your experience. What did you see? What have you heard? What have you picked up from there?
Well, there was an enormous police response last night about 10:30. The Strip lit up with police, fire, and EMS. There were people from Henderson, the state police. They were all headed towards the direction of the Mandalay Bay. There were strike teams sent to each one of the hotels that were asking people to stay in their rooms. So I was stuck listening to the event on the police scanner here and had a chance to, listen to the great response of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police.
What did those strike teams do when they arrived at these hotels?
Their job was to secure the facility to make sure that there were no follow-on attacks at other locations, which is a very well-thought-out plan and very appropriate. So the coordination that I heard over the first hour or so of this response was exceptional. Clearly, there were many victims, and there was a lot of discussion about treating the victims. But the police responded very quickly and very effectively. And considering the sniper positions that this guy had, if they hadn't got to him and forced him to commit suicide, this could have been a lot worse than it was, as bad as it is.
Wow. You have to think the firing from that direction was very confusing to people on the ground, certainly, and for law enforcement responding as well. And how do you go about locating that and getting in the room and using the explosives to blow the door off? Because based on the accounts we're putting together in this timeline, it was maybe 10 minutes, perhaps 15 minutes at most. And Ed, that's a pretty impressive response time.
It really is, considering the threat that they were under. First of all, tactically, you have to consider your approach to the building. So the first reports will indicate where the fire may be coming from, but that's all very sketchy at first. So anybody in a high position like that could take out the officers responding. But they were able to get into that hotel and determine from reports outside, but also from inside the hotel, I'm sure, there were people on that same floor that may have been calling downstairs for help and assistance. So they were very quickly able to locate the shooter and make their way to the room.
He was on a suicide mission, Ed. You would admit that, killing himself as the SWAT team entered that room.
Right, and we see this fairly often, Bill, where they decide to go out in a blaze of glory, unfortunately. But this was just indiscriminate fire. You know, from that distance, you can't see who you're firing at. You're literally just spraying a crowd of innocent people. It's unconscionable.
Yeah. Ed Davis, I'm glad you're okay. And thank you for taking a few moments with us. Ed Davis, former police commissioner there in Boston, Massachusetts, now there on the Vegas Strip in Nevada, which, you know, if you look at maps and you try and piece this together, I'm sure a lot of folks in our audience, Sandra, have been to Las Vegas a time or two. This is the southern end of that strip, right near the airport. So it's not right in the heart of Las Vegas, but it's not too far away as the maps can.
And as our reporters on the ground there have been telling us, Bill, it's eerily quiet and a city that really never sleeps. For anyone who has gone through there, or passed through there, or stayed there, it's got to be really surreal for people who, I've had people writing me this morning, they are waking up in the area and didn't know. I mean, this happened at 10 o'clock last night, where the first 911 calls, as we heard from the sheriff, came in after many people had already gone to sleep.
Yeah. We spent a fair amount of time in Las Vegas last October for the third and final presidential debate, and I can tell you, just having the opportunity to spend 7-10 days in that town, you get to know the people and you get to understand it in a way that you really don't on the outside, because you think about the MGM and you think about the Luxor and you think about the New York casinos, and on they go. But when you get a chance to take it in and to get to meet the people and understand why they're there and what Las Vegas is all about, I thought Bob Massey really put a fine point on it an hour ago. This is a big town to the whole world, but it's a very small town to those who live here.
As he said, this is a town where people wake up, they get their coffee, they go to work every morning. This is his hometown, and he was describing family members who were deeply affected by this, who were attending the concert and feared that they wouldn't see their children again. So a really horrific moment. We're waiting on the president, Bill. He is expected to come out and speak in his first verbal response to this in about 15 minutes. And as Britt Hume just said, when I asked him, what does the country want and need to hear from the president right now, he suggested perhaps a sense of calm for residents.
Bit of an embrace, too, I would imagine also. I mean, the points you made with Britt were very interesting. You've got 3 hurricanes now,
yes,
the third of which we're still dealing with in Puerto Rico, and we expected a lot of that reaction today to be on behalf of Puerto Rico. But now how quickly the events of the world can turn our attention, and man, they have done it yet again in a complete 180 as we talk about this now.
So the president will update us at 1:30. We'll also get an update from the Las Vegas police at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. We want to bring in David Bossy. He's former deputy campaign manager for President Trump. He was also a first responder, 20 years in the fire service, and has mass casualty training. David, which makes you very important at this moment. What can you make of what you have learned so far?
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to everybody in Las Vegas that's affected by this, the victims and their families. It is just a horrendous act of cowardice by the shooter, I just feel so badly waking up this morning to this, and that's one of the reasons that there's not a lot of information. Obviously, it's only 7 a.m. In Las Vegas, and I think we're going to learn a lot today. As far as the first responders are concerned, you know, it's an amazing thing to think, but two different things were going on at the same time. One, you had the police trying to locate and take down the shooter, and that's an active shooter situation, which the police departments around the country are now well versed and well trained at, and so they did an amazing job trying to keep that shooter from doing even more damage. And then secondly, you had the first responders on the ground, the men and women of the fire service, EMS, as well as police officers trying to render aid in a mass casualty incident that is really at a level that I don't know that anyone has seen. So you're trying to do the best you can to get those that are wounded by the gunfire taken care of as quickly as possible. You really have to do an incredible job in surveying what is going on, because obviously with 400 people being injured, a lot of those are from just trying to get out of there. They're going to have you know, a broken arm from jumping over something or being trampled on. So you have to figure out as a first responder you know, the level of injury and treat them accordingly. So it's a very difficult job while you're under fire, potentially, because you don't know that the police have taken care of the shooter. And so you're going into harm's way, and it's an amazing thing what the Las Vegas police and fire departments have done this morning to save people's lives.
And we have heard from local and state authorities, the governor of Nevada calling this a tragic and heinous act of violence that has shaken the Nevada family, David. Also the Las Vegas mayor saying, pray for Las Vegas. Thank you to all our first responders out there now. And she did send that a few hours ago. But, David, we've heard some of our reporters on the ground say we just walked by people still on the ground who appear to still be in medical need, to still need help. Is that possible now, a good 12 hours after the first 911 calls?
Well, it should. First of all, I mean, if folks are just shaken up and in shock, then I definitely could see those folks being a little bit forgotten about, not forgotten about, but you have to prioritize, right? You have to do the best job you can with those limited resources. So there's only so many members of the fire and EMS services that can provide assistance. There's only so many ambulances and medic units that can transport people. So with 400 people being taken to area hospitals, that will overwhelm any system. So that's not to say that people should be forgotten about or left on the side, but I would find it hard to believe at 10:20 in the morning, 7:20 out there, that is still the case. But it is, I can't explain to viewers without the experience of how difficult it would be for anyone to come onto the scene and try to survey and pick the first person that you are going to render treatment to. So it is an incredibly emotional time for the first responders as well.
And I imagine quite a hectic one. But David, with your 20 years of service as a first responder in the fire service and having had this mass casualty training, can you tell us what is happening on the ground at this point now? We've been told that many of the people who fled the concert scene went to nearby hotels. Some of them were told to stay there and until they were told otherwise. What is the strategy there?
Well, first of all, this is now 12 hours after the event. Really the first couple of hours I can expect were the most hectic and disorganized from an outsider's point of view. The medical community, what the hospitals, those trauma centers, those emergency rooms were flooded with victims, and that is why the first responders' first job is to identify those who need the most serious care, to send them to the right facility to get that care, whether it's a gunshot wound or what have you. And obviously, with that many deceased victims, you really, unfortunately, have to identify those folks who have passed away on the scene and move on to the next victim. It is. It is an unbelievable. First of all, I've never experienced anything like this, but it is, as somebody who has been part of the fire department family, it is something to watch, and my heart breaks for those individuals who have to go and make those decisions. And really, they're going to be changed forever. Yeah. It's similar to the 9/11 first responders in the mass casualty aspect of that.
All right.
It really is.
David Bossie, thank you for lending your expertise to this.
Thank you for having me.
So the Sheriff's Department in Las Vegas, they've been briefing about every 2 hours since this tragedy unfolded here. So we do expect them an hour from now to brief yet again. Oftentimes a very good source of information, so we stand by for that. We're also waiting on the president. We expect to see him at the podium in about 8 minutes, 10:30 Eastern time. As we await on that, Karl Rove, former Deputy White House Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. And Karl, an American tragedy yet again, and it's very difficult to get your arms around it, and there's no way to get your head or heart around it, especially in these early stages here now. What does the president do? What words does he use? What tone will he share with us coming up here momentarily, Karl?
Well, look, this is a moment where the country wants their commander-in-chief to be the comforter-in-chief. When we face events like this, whether it was Orlando or the death of Martin Luther King, these are the moments where all the politics drains out of the picture frame. The president emerges, and the president hopefully is the person who gives the country a way to understand this, a way to grieve together, a way to move forward together. And it's one of the most difficult assignments a president has. You can think about after 9/11, for example, President Bush's speech at the National Cathedral, or his comments on top of the fire truck in New York. The whole world can hear you. Pretty soon the people who did this will hear from all of us. There's a moment like this where a president has to say the things that the country wants to hear in order to comfort them. Mm-hmm. And difficult assignment, and particularly difficult on this day when you have a senseless act of evil. It's so hard. You're right. It's hard to get our hands and our minds around this because it is so irrational and so devoid of any purpose whatsoever, just an act of pure evil to rain down fire from above on a crowd of people attending a concert.
Listen, you react with such sorrow, and you also, it's understandably so, you react with such anger. And I think it's okay to channel that as president.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But to channel it in the right way, which is this is an act of evil. There are, this is a reminder that in our world, a fallen world, that there are people who will commit an act of senseless evil. Some of them will act on behalf of a cause. Others will act on behalf of nothing. But this is a moment where the country will, to some degree, put aside their political prejudices or their political concerns or their political biases and listen to the president. And this is when they want to hear from him the words of comfort and grief.
When you are commander-in-chief and you are in this situation and so many millions rely on the message that you have, it must be in your words as well. And that's right. That has to come through, Carl.
Yeah, authenticity matters enormously here. And the good news is that the people we send to Washington to live in that house on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue tend to rise to these moments. They rise because they recognize inside that this is a moment where their leadership and their is desired by the country, and it's a necessity for them to share what they feel and to do so in an authentic way. And look, these things touch, just as they touch ordinary Americans, they touch the President of the United States and the people around him, and I think we'll see that reflected here momentarily.
Very interesting, and the First Lady, I'm certain, will be well, we may see her as well. Let's stand by to see whether or not that happens. Britt was talking with Sandra 30 minutes ago, and he made the point where he gets the sense where Americans just want things to slow down. And be it a man-made situation or a natural disaster that we've been watching, hurricane after hurricane after hurricane. I mean, what is your sense there in Austin, Texas, about the pace of life that has been unrelenting for more than a year?
You know, I thought Brett made a wonderful point. I was watching our colleague Brett Baer on Friday night as he went through the week in review with snippets of what had happened just simply in the preceding 6 days. And I mean, it was almost overwhelming. I don't think we've ever seen the opening months of a presidency in which the country has been roiled by so many things and has had to experience so many things and has suffered so much in the way of natural disasters. Not just one, not just two, but now three major hurricanes have hit the territory of the United States. And so, yeah, I think Britt is absolutely right. And look, a lot goes on in the life of the country no matter what. But we're in a new age in which between cable TV and social media and there just is so much information that's coming at us and so much information that we share with others about our own experiences in those moments that sometimes it's overwhelming. I wonder if as a country we actually can calm down and arrive at a point where the pace seems to be less. There seems to be, enough for us to handle, but not too much. It's and this is going to simply add to it. I mean, we're going to be talking about this and grieving over this and examining this for days to come.
We should see the president in a matter of minutes. Thank you, Carl. Carl Rove there live in Austin, Texas. Sandra.
All right, let's go to Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts, who has reaction from the Oval Office. John, as we await the president to speak just a few moments, and now this is the first time we will hear him verbally since this horrific attack last evening in Las Vegas.
It is, and if these new reports bear fruit that ISIS is claiming responsibility for this, allegations that this man converted to Islam months ago, that could dramatically change the tone of what the president is about to say. I mean, clearly when you have a mass shooter like we saw last night, early this morning in Las Vegas, it prompts one kind of reaction. But if there is a nexus to terrorism on this, and the initial reports were that there wasn't, that will definitely change the tone. Coming from the president, though, I just contacted sources at the National Security Council. They're running traps on this claim by ISIS to have somehow influenced this man in doing what he did last night. The president, though, so far has said on Twitter, quote, "My warmest condolences and sympathies to the victims and families of the terrible Las Vegas shooting. God bless you." We also heard from Vice President Pence this morning in a series of tweets in which he said, "To victims, families, and loved ones affected by the senseless violence in Las Vegas, Karen and I are praying for you and offering our love. The hearts and prayers of the American people are with you. You have our condolences and sympathies. To the courageous first responders, thank you for your acts of bravery." We also saw rare tweets this morning from Ivanka Trump, who does not make it a habit of tweeting things, but in this particular case felt that it was necessary to weigh in, saying, quote, "America woke up this morning to the horrific news of a devastating mass shooting in Las Vegas. Our collective hearts are breaking for the victims and their families. Heart, I love Las Vegas." So you can see that there is just unity of response coming here from the White House today to this. But again, Sandra, should this prove to be an act of terrorism, as ISIS sources are claiming it is, that will dramatically change what the president says and what the response will be going forward. Sandra?
All right, so John, the president expected to speak in just a few moments, and we'll get an update from Las Vegas police on the situation on the ground there in about 1 hour. But as we await the president, there is so much on this president's plate, as we have been talking about throughout the morning. Still devastation in Puerto Rico, the recent hurricanes, and now this. The president has so much to deal with as we await him to speak just a few moments from now. What more specifically what sort of tone can we expect the president to take?
Well, again, if they do have some sort of evidence, as ISIS is claiming, that there is a nexus to terrorism here, that will dramatically change the president's approach to this. I mean, in any way you cut it, he is going to denounce what happened last night in Las Vegas. But if there is some sort of connection with what's been going on overseas and some of the attacks that we've seen here in the United States and ones that we've seen overseas as well, that will definitely prompt a different response from the president. But as Bill was speaking with Karl Rove about just a few minutes ago, it has been one after the other for this White House. Now, we should point out that what's going on in Las Vegas right now is being handled by the FBI and the local authorities. Should it prove that it is linked to terrorism, that will prompt a much greater federal response. And the president scheduled still to go to Puerto Rico and potentially the Virgin Islands tomorrow. I mean, there's no question, Sandra, that this administration, this White House, has had its hands full, and now something else piled on top of everything else that's been going on. But I know Tom Bossert, the Homeland Security Advisor. He is a true professional here. Elaine Duke at the Department of Homeland Security, from every report that I've got, really knows what she is doing and gets high marks from people I know who are involved in Homeland Security. So they have the horses to be able to respond to this, but there's no question that they are beginning to get stretched a little bit thin with everything that has been going on, particularly the massive response that they have had to mount in response to that hurricane in Puerto Rico, Sandra.
All right, John Roberts at the White House, where the president is set to begin speaking shortly. And meanwhile, I'll point out, thanks to John Roberts for that, the president's schedule has drastically changed today, and as a result of this, he was expected to be speaking on regulations, but that will not be happening anymore. So this will be the first verbal response from President Trump.
Speaker Paul Ryan, a statement out, Sandra, moments ago. Just want to read this off the computer. America woke up this morning to heartbreaking news, says the speaker. This evil tragedy horrifies us all. To the people of Las Vegas and the families of the victims, we are with you during this time. He concludes, the whole country stands united in our shock, in our condolences, and in our prayers, end quote. And some of the eyewitness accounts about people, bystanders, springing into action and becoming first responders on their own, and describing people dying in their arms as they were trying to get them to hang on to life. I mean, these are truly heartbreaking moments, and you're going to hear a lot about them because there were tens of thousands of people, and each one of them has their own story.
And so few people knew exactly what was going on. They described it sounded like fireworks. As you keep saying, Bill, this was the final song of the final day of this three-day country music festival. They said, we thought it was fireworks. So
this killer knew. He knew the schedule. He had been in that hotel since Thursday. He was casing the place for 3.5 days and picked his moment to strike.
And then hearing from his brother, fresh reaction from him just a few moments ago at his home in Florida, saying he's absolutely shocked that he could have never predicted his brother would have acted like this.
We're in the very early stages of learning a lot about this, Sandra. You're right about that. They were looking for a roommate, apparently, of this killer, Mary Lou Danley, described as an Asian female, 4 feet 11, 111 pounds. And when we came to work at 6 o'clock this morning, she was still nowhere to be found, but apparently the police have located her. She is going to be, I believe, a great source of information to know what was in the mind of this killer and as to why he chose this route.
And meanwhile, people are still looking for their loved ones. You have to imagine there was sort of a younger crowd there for a country music concert on the Las Vegas Strip, Bill. Family reunions are still taking place. The Las Vegas police did say phone numbers are being provided. People still need medical help. Over 400 people transported to area hospitals. They need blood. They need donors. So if you're in the area, they are asking you to please go where you can and donate blood if you are able.
Let's get back to the Strip now. Adam Housley reporting all night long. He went there for another story. He went there for the release of O.J. Simpson back to civilian life, and now we are greeted with this. Adam, near the Mandalay Bay, you showed us the image 45 minutes ago. There's 2 windows blown out. What have you seen since then?
A number of things. You know, how I would give and what I would give to go back to just be covering O.J. We were complaining about that, and now we've got, you know, this terror to deal with. It's just unbelievable. Bill, I got to show you something here because this kind of gives you an idea of the chaos. To my left, you'll see over here my shoulder, you'll see kind of the area where the concert was. Not far, just on the other side of this parking lot. We've moved over here because we don't want to taint anything in the crime scene, and we've been working with local law enforcement. They've been doing great. And if you keep coming along, you'll actually see the stage. Why this is important. When we got here, people were running in all directions. We met people with blood all over them that wasn't theirs. But we're also now finding a lot of other, basically the chaos. I'm told that if you come through here, that part of this metal barrier right here, basic metal fence, was not like this, that people actually busted through this. It may have been a little bit loose or whatever, but in the chaos, they came this way. And this is a good 2 blocks. If you keep going now to my right, which we can't turn the camera that way, unfortunately, because we're blocked out, there's a cyclone fence with barbed wire on top. It was knocked over, and there's a gas storage facility over there, and one of the sheds has blood all over it, and they broke through the door. People were so, it was so chaotic, and they were so desperate to get away that this far away from that scene, from those windows, they were breaking through fences, breaking open doors, and hiding in a gas facility storage shed. The firefighters just walked by us. They're going to go look in that shed, and hopefully they don't find anybody. But that's what it was like here, Bill. For a number of hours, people coming out, was just blood all over them. Some of them were injured. Most of them were from blood from other people that they'd helped. We do know that bodies were found right down the street from where I'm standing. 3 of them were there. We know 1 was in front of a hotel right over here. Those bodies were left. They were taken away initially with the thought that those people would live, they would survive. And we're told with these 3 specifically, once they got to this point and they realized that it was no longer a possibility, they put the bodies off to one side, out of the way, to ensure that, you know, they were not messed with and they were covered up. But that was the scene here, Bill, and those bodies were here until 3 o'clock this morning. And there's still bodies inside this crime scene. The FBI is coming out here. I mean, this is just, it's unfathomable. Yeah. I mean, to really put all this in perspective, the firefighters coming out now, I don't think they found anything. We're sending a producer over to find out. But it just tells you the desperation to see blood on a storage facility this far away. Bill? Do you have any information on the caliber of the round that was fired into this crowd? We don't. We're trying. We have some people speculating, but I don't want to go with speculation at this point. You know, tin rifles. Yeah, I mean, but clearly, Bill, hearing it, the thing that we got, and when we got here early, was when the same thing we were told from everybody inside, and we were a lot of law enforcement here off duty, a lot of fire department here off duty, a lot of military here off duty, country concert. They obviously enjoy that type of music. They all said the same thing. A lot of firing, 3 separate bursts. Automatic gunfire. I mean, these guys, one person in particular had 2 tours of Iraq. I mean, he knows what he's hearing. So we have a reason to believe the kind of caliber weapon, but at this point, I know that's being looked into. And also, the 2 windows, Bill, we believe now that's the same room. I'm going to show it to you again real quick. I know there's some talk. Some of the viewers were asking us, is that two separate rooms? That corner of the hotel, I'm told, I've not stayed in that corner of the hotel. I have stayed in that hotel before, but I'm told that potentially is the exact same room. And he may have been, in fact, one of the law enforcement guys here, one of the police officers I'm friends with, or become friends with, unfortunately, because of this, said that they believe that he may have actually shot out of both those windows, and at the angle that we first saw them, our satellite operator Eric Graychuk was the one that first saw them when the sun came up. That angle, both those windows have a direct line of sight down onto the area of where the concert was, and it would explain why two different areas got shot up, because one of them was kind of blocked out a little bit by the stage, the other one is not. So that could explain why that gunfire stopped for a bit as well, Bill.
We talked to an eyewitness last hour. She said she ran up to 8 miles trying to find cover and be reunited with her parents. And what a story she had to tell. She says she goes to the festival, has been going for the last 3 years. The Route 91 Harvest Festival, some of the biggest acts in country music. You're in and out of Vegas a lot, given your job, Adam. Are you aware of this festival, given the number of acts that come through Las Vegas on a weekly and monthly basis?
You know what's interesting is that you drive into Vegas, you fly into Vegas, you see billboards everywhere. I mean, there's an acts every night. And I mentioned to my photographer, Eric, I said, you know, we were here for the last couple of days for OJ. We went out to dinner. We didn't go, obviously, party in the Strip or anything because we're here working. But, you know, we drove over and had some food. And the billboards all around. We didn't even know this concert series was going on, that there was going to be 30,000 people here. I mean, if you haven't been to Vegas, and a lot of people have, the Strip is such a massive, it seems so small because the buildings are so large, but it's actually a very long and massive area. So we didn't even know this was going on down here. When I heard there was a shooting at a country concert, I was like, there's a country concert in Vegas? Because there's so much stuff going on here. So yeah, we didn't know this was taking place, and we'd been here for a couple of days.
Adam, stand by, okay? You're going to have a long day ahead after a very long night last night. Adam Housley reporting in the Strip there, waiting on the president, Sandra. We will see him in a matter of moments, we do believe, from the diplomatic room at the White House. All
right, we will bring that to you live when it begins. Meanwhile, Buck Sexton is a former CIA officer and also served in the New York Police Department Intelligence Division working on counterterrorism issues. Buck, can you give us some idea of what's happening on the ground in Las Vegas right now at this stage as far as the investigation is concerned?
Well, we know that they've already found the suspect's home, and they're going through to try to ascertain what the motive here could be. Right now, people really are just guessing. They have no idea outside of law enforcement circles what could have brought somebody to engage in such a horrific act. They will be looking for any connections to individuals who may have assisted in perhaps this attack in one way or another. We don't know the status of the firearms that he had yet. Were they all legal? Was one or several of them somehow obtained illegally? Law enforcement will be looking very closely at that, and they'll also be trying to work backwards to see if there are any signs that were missed or any security measures that could have been put in place to prevent this in the future. But right now, it's just mostly trying to answer the big questions of what could have possessed somebody to engage in such a horrific mass murder spree. And law enforcement also wants to make sure that there's no secondary attacks, no individuals tied to him that may decide to act on their own. Those are remote possibilities, but they have to take those very seriously. There'll be an enhanced security posture and greater vigilance now in Las Vegas and the surrounding area.
You look back at last night and how fast things happened, and the massive undertaking that was for police and SWAT, over 3,000 rooms in that hotel. This happened on the 32nd floor where the shooter was stationed overlooking those 22,000 concert goers. There's over 40 floors in that hotel. For them to have entered after the shooting began, find that shooter, he then took his own life before police did. But you think about what went down, how fast it happened, and how quick the response was, Buck.